Yu-Gi-Oh is one of the most fun trading card games anyone can ever play. But let's admit it, in today's world, it is a very complicated game. I mean, there are a lot of cards that can just keep you from playing the game. It tends to ruin a player's day. I cannot begin to tell you how often I've come across players that are just so upset and then they hate how one card or one deck is somehow just ruining the format, which in turn just makes them hate the game altogether. At this point, if they're still playing, then it seems like to me they're just punishing themselves at this point. While I do agree that some cards or decks have been very OP on both the press and in the present day, it becomes really annoying at some point when players are constantly asking and begging Konami to change the format right now, as if changing it is gonna make everybody happy or something. We have had some changes that have done a ton of good before, and some changes that barely did anything at all. But from my experience, no matter how the format changes, there's always going to be at least one person that doesn't like it. While changes are a good thing and needed, it doesn't always bring the happiness that everyone's always expecting, and that brings me sadness when people are hating or getting upset over something that they love. I know I've experienced something like that before, and that's one of the reasons why I'm making this video. On my journey to become a better Yu-Gi-Oh player, my father introduced me to this book called The Obstacle is the Way, and in it introducing some philosophy concepts that I never thought about before, and once I read through them and started applying them, my point of view on things started to change. I saw things different. Over time, I delved in deeper into these other philosophy concepts, and from there, I have found ways to not only help me become a better player, but also enjoy the game more, regardless of the situation. Now I want to share some of the concepts that have helped me enjoy the game more. My hope is that one of these concepts will at least strike a chord in you, something to consider about, food for thought. But keep in mind, these philosophy and concepts I'm about to share with you are only concepts that helped me in my Yu-Gi-Oh journey, so they may not work with you. But there are some other philosophy concepts out there that might actually fit you better. But also, these philosophy concepts are not permanent fixes, just be aware. And you won't get the full benefit of them just by applying them once. You have to be constantly applying them every single day. Lastly, let me just say that these philosophy concepts are not just for Yu-Gi-Oh! You could also apply them in your day-to-day life. So whether you're a Yu-Gi-Oh! Player or not, I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe you'll learn something that can help you enjoy life altogether. Let's start with one of my favorites. For as long as you have lived, I'm willing to bet you have experienced a moment where something bad has happened in your life. Like maybe you got into a car accident, or maybe something happened and you lost all of your money, or maybe you lost a friend, a family member, or a loved one. Those moments, it hurts. In terms of Yu-Gi-Oh, that would be like losing a match to a deck you seriously hate, or losing 3 games in a tournament, and from there you just are completely out of the run of making top cut, and from there you lost your chance to try to win the tournament. Those moments are not always fun, and we sometimes wish they could have ended differently. But maybe the problem is not the event itself, it's how we handle it. What I mean is, maybe instead of feeling upset about it, we should just shrug it off and be indifferent towards it. That's easier said than done, I know, but it's not impossible. There's a type of philosophy called Stoicism that seeks to help improve the lives of people in their day-to-day life. One Stoic notion is that when a bad event occurs, the problem is not the event itself, but how we judge it. In that sense, it means that when an event happens, it's neither good nor bad. I mean, if you think about it, whatever event happens out there that we deem to be bad might be deemed to be good for another person. For example, if we lost a match in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh, well, for us, that's really bad because, well, we lost. But to our opponent, that's really good because they won. Like maybe that was the match that was determined in top cut, and to us, we perceive bad because we lost that chance in top cut, but to our opponent, they're excited because they made top cut. But you can see from there that on an event like that, that's neither good nor is it bad. So if an event is not good or bad, then maybe the event's not the problem, but how we perceive it. We focus on this event and declare it bad in hopes that we may either undo it or get some sort of sentimental value from it. In a sense, it makes us want to control the event altogether because it didn't give us that sense of pleasure, that sense of joy that we were looking to obtain. And that right there is the problem. Trying to control something we cannot control. According to the Stoics, anything and everything that happens outside of us is completely out of our control. Yet we focus on them as if by doing that we can somehow control them. Just imagine how better it would be if we can just control things and prevent some sort of and undo some bad event that has happened. As great as that sounds, that's just not possible. After all, how would you feel if someone controlled you and made you do something you didn't want to do? If everyone could control the things that they did not like, well then our world would be out of order. And since focusing on trying to control something doesn't give us the control that we seek, why bother focusing on it? Instead, why not just focus on the things that we can control, like our actions or how we respond to things that have happened? If you can do that and let go of all the external events that happen, well then you can find a sense of calm, a sense of joy even. When it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, you don't control what deck your opponent chooses to play. You control how you play the game. You don't control how your opponent plays their cards. You control how you play. You don't control what cards your opponent starts off with. You control how you play. You don't control if your opponent has the best cards in the world or not. You control how you play. You don't control what your opponent says about you or if they lie or cheat. You control how you play. You don't control if the judge makes an incorrect ruling and ruins your chances of victory. You control how you play. You don't control who you will play against. You control how you play. Focus solely on what is in your control and ignore everything else. That is all we can do. As one Stoic philosopher by the name of Epictetus put it, quote, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." In Stoicism, they have many different quotes and phrases, but my absolute favorite phrase of all time is amor fati. Amor fati is Latin, which means love of fate. Basically, it means to love whatever happens to you. Love whatever fate throws at you. Not just the good times, but also the bad times. As I mentioned before, external events are things that are completely out of our control, so focusing on them does us no good whatsoever. It's just wasting our time. What is under control though is how we respond to them. In Yu-Gi-Oh, there are times where our opponent goes first and is able to completely stop us from playing the game. Sometimes it's through floodgates, or because they spent 10 to 15 minutes comboing that just made a board that completely doesn't let us do anything. No one enjoys sitting down to play a game just to lose straight out without doing a single darn thing. How could we enjoy something like that? What am I to tell you that there is merit towards loving those moments? What I'm saying is, if we learn to love those moments, we initially trick our brain into loving them, thereby transforming that pain into pleasure. I once knew a guy back in high school who was completely afraid of cats, but it wasn't always like this. In fact, he remembers how this fear developed. When he was younger, he tried to make a girl laugh by pretending to be afraid of cats, and it worked. But as he kept doing that over and over again, what he didn't realize is that he was tricking his brain into developing a fear that wasn't there before. And eventually, that fear became a reality. Now imagine that if we did something similar to that, but instead of developing a fear, we turn that fear into enjoyment, into pleasure. In other words, we trick our brain into loving the hard times, into loving pain and discomfort. Steven Pressfield, who wrote this book called The War of Art, even touches on this notion in one of the book's passages, How to Be Miserable. In it, he explains his time in the Marine Corps and how they were taught to love being miserable. Quote, "The artist must be like that Marine. He has to know how to be miserable. He has to love being miserable. He has to take pride in being more miserable than any soldier or swabby or jet jockey. Because this is war, baby. And war is hell." End quote. Again, this is hard to accept, but ask yourself, when has resisting or complaining about something done you any good? Sure, when we were toddlers, this method worked, but those days are over now. No one is gonna come rushing to your aid like before. You're not a child anymore. So if having a negative attitude towards something isn't going to fix it like we used to know, then perhaps we should flip the script and learn to love it. If we can do that, we can think with a clear mind. After all, when have you not been able to think clearly in moments when your mind was completely calm? What's the last thing you can remember when someone complimented you on something? What was the compliment about? And how did that make you feel? I imagine it was probably a good thing because, well, it was a compliment. Whenever you're good at something and someone notices and says something about it, it just makes you feel really good, doesn't it? It makes you want to do it again. But eventually, that fades away unless you focus on getting better at it. When you sit down and focus on trying to improve at something, not only do you get better at it, but it gives you a great sense of pleasure in the form like you're some kind of superhero where you just make this own inner little world. In it, you are the hero and you can do all these amazing things that you just couldn't do in reality. To help illustrate this, I'm going to be using this one-shot manga called Look Back, which was created by Tsuzuki Fujimoto. I hope I pronounced that right. And he's the guy that created everyone's favorite manga, Chainsaw Man. So in this one-shot story, spoilers by the way, we follow a girl by the name of Fujino. She makes some comedic tricks that a lot of people in her class really enjoy. But then one day, another girl by the name of Kiyomoto gets a spot on the comic strip side of the paper, and upon comparing these two, you can easily tell that Kiyomoto's art was far superior to Fujino's, and that gave us a bit of distress. Not wanting to be outdone by the new girl, Fujino immediately starts looking up ways on how to get better at drawing and starts practicing. But after a few years, she realizes she's not going to catch up to her and eventually decides to quit. But shortly after she made that decision, she runs into Kiyomoto, and Kiyomoto starts fangirling because she is a fan of Fujino's work. Surprise! And Kiyomoto just starts saying how she's looking forward to Fujino's next work. Upon hearing this, Fujino runs back home and starts practicing her drawings immediately. There are many paths we can take in life, but we only need to focus on one thing. From my personal experience, I used to be into many different things, Yu-Gi-Oh included. I would often switch from one thing to the next, and then to the next, and then to the next. I was just a jack of all trades. But then one day I decided to focus more on Yu-Gi-Oh. From doing that, I was able to greatly develop my knowledge and skills in the game. That's not to say I don't enjoy doing other things anymore. I still do, but focusing on Yu-Gi-Oh made me enjoy it more. However, if you're just looking for that good feeling, that sense of passion, then I hate to break it to you, it's not a good thing. It's gonna lead you astray. Stuff like passion only lasts for a short time. They start from the moment we first feel them and then last for like 3 days. After that, it's gone. Zero. Zilch. And it's because of that so many people just stop getting better at something and let go of it. So instead, they just stretch themselves out to other topics and never get better at any of them. If that sounds like you, then you need to sit down and decide on what it is you want to focus on, what it is that you want to do. Once you've made your choice, ignore everything else and focus solely on that one thing. Nothing else matters. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy other things or have another hobby. That's completely fine. But you need to sit down and focus on just one thing. And by doing that, not only do you get better at it, you will obtain those superhero-like powers that you've admired in others before. More importantly, you have to keep doing it whenever you don't feel like doing it. When you're no longer feeling that sense of passion. That's the real challenge right there. The moment that will make or break you. And one cool thing about focusing on one thing is that if we're stuck in some sort of rut, it helps us get out of that rut. Because focusing on just that one thing gives us a purpose in life. You know that most age-old question, what's the meaning of life? Well, what if we look at it the wrong way? What if we looked at it from a different perspective? Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, used this question to help survive his time in the concentration camps. He looked at it as not us asking life the question. He looked at it as life asking us that question. This could be freeing because that means whatever path we take in life will truly be our own. And we can focus on the things that we want to do. By focusing on what you want to get better at, not only do we enjoy it more, but it gives us a sense of purpose in life, a meaning to our life. It tells us that this is what we are here to do. This is the reason why we were born. Following our passions may be fun, but it brings detrimental to our life in the long run. Funny thing is though, if we sit down and focus on improving at one thing, we will in turn make that one thing our passion. Ever since I made the decision to become a Yu-Gi-Oh player, I cannot begin to tell you how excited I get whenever I see something Yu-Gi-Oh related, be it art, combos, replay videos, just I love them all. My advice to you is this: let passion come to you, not the other way around. To do that, decide what it is you want to do with your life and focus solely on that one thing. Dedicate everything to that field and keep going even when you don't feel like you want to keep going, because by doing so, you will get the internal sense of pleasure that you have been searching for. Be strict with yourself, tolerant with others. For this last part, there's two things you need to do. The first is start identifying yourself as a duelist. When I say identifying as your duelist, I don't just mean playing the game or saying you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player. I mean, that's kind of a good start, but I mean really identifying yourself as one. Take a moment to think about a tennis player, for example. What do you think a tennis player does? Well, obviously they would play tennis. That's what they do. And they will most likely practice playing tennis. They want to stay in shape. I mean, what else would they be doing? Well, what are some other things a tennis player would need to be doing? Well, let's see. Of course, they need to get some equipment, because you can't practice tennis if you don't have the gear, right? And plus, they need to follow a workout regimen because they gotta stay in shape. And a tennis player, you could say, will also be looking for ways to get better at the game, looking for any tips or tricks that they did not know about that can help improve their performance or just improve their career altogether. But those are not the only things a tennis player will need to deal with. There's also some of the bad things they need to deal with. This can be things from broken equipment to injuries and, of course, losing. However, these things would not discourage a tennis player, because this is what they signed up for. This is what they anticipate. This is what they love to do. It's part of the process, and it's a process that they love. But in order to enjoy the process, you have to give it your all. That's what makes it fun. I am a big believer in the fact that if you don't give something your all, then why bother trying at all? Whenever I play Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't ever hold back. Ever. Nor do I quit until my life points hit 0. To me, if I hold back, then I am being disrespectful to not only to my opponent, but to myself. And I play out the game for as long as I can because, well, I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player. To me, that is what a Yu-Gi-Oh player wants to do. That's where a Yu-Gi-Oh player wants to be. I would see no reason as to why one would quit a game so soon, especially if they know or treat it like it's the last game of the day. Seriously, if you're doing something that you enjoy and you know it's gonna be the last one before you need to go to bed, you would probably want to stick out and play it for as long as you can, wouldn't you? From the Bucket of Hira, I might be butchering the name here, Lord Krishna had this quote in it that says, "You have the right to work, but never to the fruit of the work." End quote. This is one of my favorite lifetime quotes that I try to remind myself whenever I do something Yu-Gi-Oh related. The reason I'm bringing this out is because you don't have a right to anything that happens from your game of playing Yu-Gi-Oh. You only have the right to play that game. You don't have a right to who or what you'll be facing. You don't have a right to how the game will turn out or the fruits that your game produces. You only have the right to that game in that moment. And to someone that identifies themselves as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, that is all they ask for. Just having the chance to play the game that they love is all they need. That's more than enough. And that brings us to the other part that you need to apply to yourself, and that is learning to love yourself. Be honest with yourself. Do you love yourself? How much do you love yourself? Can you look yourself in the mirror without breaking eye contact and say you love yourself and truly mean it? This is so important. I cannot begin to describe to you how important this is. You need to love yourself to the point where you treat yourself like you would for a pet or a loved one. But most of all, you should make sure that you do the things that you know you want to do. That means saying yes to the things you know you want to do and saying hell no to the things you don't want. More importantly, it will encourage you to do the things that you want to be doing. This is so important because lots of people know what it is that they enjoy doing, but they don't always act on doing them. There's a good quote from the famous Stoic philosopher named Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor at the time and considered to be the most powerful man in the world during his reign. He wrote this book called The Meditations, which, funny enough, was not supposed to be a book he meant to publish. It's his own personal diary. But it survived over hundreds and thousands of years. And there's some great knowledge in there. Here's a quote from the Meditations. Quote, "You don't love yourself enough, or you love your nature too and what it demands of you. People who love what they do wear themselves down doing it. They even forget to wash or eat. Do you have less respect for your own nature than the engraver does for the engraving, the dancer for the dance, the miser for money, or the social climber for status? When they really possessed by what they do, they rather stop eating and sleeping than give up practicing their arts." End quote. To apply all of this to Yu-Gi-Oh, start identifying yourself as a duelist. Think about what a duelist wants to do or should be doing, and think about what it is they have to deal with. Once you figure that out, take those ideas and start applying them to your own life. As Marcus Aurelius once said, quote, "Waste no more time talking about what a good man is like. Be one." In other words, don't just talk about what a good Yu-Gi-Oh player is. Be one. Embody it. And make sure it's something you love to do because you know you love yourself. To close this off, there's one thing I want to add, and that is, make sure you are playing Yu-Gi-Oh because you want to play it, not because you're hoping to get a reward or achieve something. Many players do their best to win events because they want to get something out of it, which is usually material things, and it's understandable why if you consider how much money and effort a player puts into the game. But if you ask me, that's why players are so miserable at times. When they lose all that money, all that effort, all those travel, gone. It was for nothing. As you can see, doing that is what robs you of your happiness. They are making it so they are only happy if they win the event or tournament. And that's the problem. They're expecting an external event to give them the sense of pleasure and joy that they were hoping to get. But they are forgetting that event, that tournament, the results of it is completely external, meaning it's not in their control. You have to focus solely on what is in your control, and that's where you will get the happiness from. Focus on what is in your control, and that is your response to external events and your actions. One thing that is in our control though is how we respond to things. Because it is, why not let go of being angry and upset and just focus on enjoying whatever happens? Amor fati. Love it. Love your fate. Love whatever happens, be it good or bad. If you learn to love whatever happens to you, then no matter what happens to you, or who or what you will run into, neither of those things can ever take away your own sense of happiness. If your opponent plays a long combo deck that just shuts you down, rips every card out of your hand, slowly burns your life away, or limits your plays altogether and just stops you from playing altogether, just say amor fati. I love it. After all, everyone has to deal with some kind of obstacles along the path at some point, and those obstacles are what a Yu-Gi-Oh player has to deal with. But someone that identifies as a Yu-Gi-Oh player won't be discouraged by them because they know it's part of the process, a process that they love. And to me, a Yu-Gi-Oh player is not someone who only enjoys playing the game, but aims to get better at it. Focus solely on what it is you want to get better at, just one thing, and give it your all, because doing that will give you a sense of purpose in life, a reason to get out of bed every single day. Everything I shared you thus far is not strictly for Yu-Gi-Oh! All of these things can be applied to your day-to-day life in whatever path you choose to take. However, these things are not guaranteed to work overnight. You have to constantly work on them every single day like a workout regimen. If you want to get the full benefits, you have to show up to work and get to work on them whenever you can, as often as you can. If you love yourself and you want what is best for you, then this will be well worth it in the long run. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you have/had an awesome day today.